Coming up on Tech News Today, and so Samsung's watch begins. Also, Sony's got a lens you can attach to your smartphone, and the truth about Android KitKat. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, September 4th, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by ProXPN. ProXPN is a virtual private network that allows you to use the internet the way it should be, anonymously and without oversight. For 20% off your new account, go to proxpn.com/twit and use the code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Ayaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show. We keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world, put them into context for you, starting with the top 10 stories of the day. We call it the News Fuse. Samsung announced 3 new products at their IFA version of Samsung Unpacked in Berlin. The Samsung Galaxy Note 3 is an iteration of their large form or phone or phablet, whatever you want to call it. The Note 3 has a 5.7-inch screen, comes with a new textured back. You can get it in black, white, or pink. Samsung also announced a new Note 10.1 that's thinner and lighter. And, of course, what you all were waiting for, the Galaxy Gear Watch, available for $299, compatible with any of Samsung's Android 4.3 devices, mainly the 2 new Notes and the upgraded Galaxy S4s. The Note 3 and Gear will be available September 25th in 149 countries, and all 3 devices will be available in all countries in October, including the U.S. and Japan.
IFA doesn't start until Friday, but Sony's already announced the Xperia Z1 phone with a 5-inch full HD display and the newest Snapdragon processor. You can get that in black, white, or purple with back cover. It's fully waterproof, so says Sony. And if you're a developer, you can access the API to add some functionality to the camera software. Sony also formally announced the QX100 smart lens with the image quality of Sony's RX100, but for Android and iOS smartphones. Both the Xperia Z1 and the QX100 have Wi-Fi enabled, NFC, and Bion's image processors. The Xperia Z1 launches this month. The QX100 will ship later in September for $250.
Get your calendars out and mark November 22nd as the launch date of the Microsoft Xbox One in 13 countries. Which 13 countries? Well, here it goes. Australia, Austria, Brazil, Canada, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Mexico, New Zealand, Spain, UK, and the USA. The console will retail for $499 in the US. The Sony PlayStation 4 launches on November 15th for $399. Oh, and that Wii U, by the way, is still out there with that nice price cut of $299.
Fingerprint sensors, champagne gold-colored iPhones, but really, what's an Apple pre-announcement rumor without an Apple television rumor? Well, GigaOm's got you covered. Panjiva, a supply chain analyst, puts forth the following evidence culled from bills of lading filed with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. On August 11th, 18th, and 25th, Apple received shipments all called some variation of set-top box with communication function from BYD Precision Manufacture in Shenzhen, China. The evidence is right in front of your eyes, people.
Okay, hard to follow that one, but Google Authenticator, an app that generates 2-factor authentication codes for services that offer that additional security layer, has had a little issue with its latest update for iOS, namely that it disconnects all services that users have already connected to the app, you know, like GitHub or Twilio or Evernote, and then they have to be resynced all over again. And when you're talking about 2-factor, that's really annoying. Google says it's working on an update to fix the problem.
When I saw the next story this morning, I said something that rhymed with moly spit. HDMI licensing just announced HDMI 2.0 officially. The new standard will be able to carry bandwidth of 18 gigabits per second, handle up to 32 channels of audio, and show video with a resolution of 3840 by 2160 at 60 frames per second. HDMI 2.0 will even use the same style connector. Moly spit indeed.
Truck, yeah. On the anniversary of the issuance of George Eastman's roll film box camera patent back in 1888, we have news of Eastman Kodak emerging from bankruptcy. Late last year, Kodak sold 1,100 of its patents for $525 million to help save the company. Kodak will now focus on high-speed digital printing and other business imaging needs like packaging, functional printing, graphic communications, etc. The personalized imaging and document imaging business were sold to Kodak Pension Plan.
Several major memory suppliers have stopped shipments or postponed them anyway after SK Hynix Semiconductor's memory fabrication plants in Wuxi, I'm probably saying that wrong and I will hear about it, China, went up in flames this morning after a chemical explosion. Reportedly, suppliers would like to hold off with shipments until they know the full extent of the damage to the Hynix plants, as well as the effect on the market, potential one anyway. SK Hynix has since released a statement that the fires have been extinguished.
Alcatel launched 2 new smartphones. Alcatel's new Android 4.2 flagship, the One Touch Idol X, has a 5-inch IPS display, 1080 by 920 screen, Dragon Trail glass, also carries 2 gigabytes of RAM, a 2,000 milliamp hour battery, and 3G. Yeah, it's European, so 3G. The single SIM model has a 8 gigabyte storage internal and expandable to 32 gigs. The dual SIM model is an unexpandable 16 gigabytes. Then the One Touch Hero has a 6-inch IPS display at 1080 by 920, 16 gigabytes of expandable memory, dual SIM, a 3,400 milliamp hour battery, and no release date or price date for either one.
Bionim announced the NIMI wristband that uses your heart electrical activity to authenticate you to a variety of devices. That would mean if you wore one of these wristbands, you'd be able to unlock a car door or log into a website just by having a beating heart. Now, if having a heart is difficult for you, the NIMI also supports gestures. The Bionim NIMI wristband is up for pre-order right now for $80 and will ship early next year.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by ProXPN. No matter where you are in the world, you need to protect your data connection. And when you're out and about at a hotel or at an airport or even just around the corner at the coffee shop, people can sniff your packets if you're just using the open Wi-Fi. That's why you need a virtual private network, something like VPN. It's what I do. I was just traveling for DragonCon this weekend, and man, when I could get it, Wi-Fi in the hotel was the only internet that would work for me. And thank goodness I had VPN and ProXPN to kind of make sure those packets weren't being snooped on. ProXPN is a global virtual private network, complete online privacy through a 512-bit encryption tunnel, and it works by OpenVPN or PPTP. So you can set it up on your phone, you can set it up on your Linux machine, and there's actually a new ProXPN app for Android in the Google Play Store that supports OpenVPN. Bypass geographical restrictions, bypass filters, get it for Windows and Mac too, and world-class customer support. Even Steve Gibson gave it a great review on security. Now, that's how good this is. Go to proxpn.com/twit for more information and to sign up. ProXPN premium accounts are normally $9.95 a month or $74.95 for an entire year, but we've got a special offer. Use the code TNT to receive 20% off the lifetime of your account. That's less than $5 a month on the yearly plan. If you're not satisfied, you can cancel within 7 days for a full refund. So go to proxpn.com/twit, sign up with the code TNT, and show your support for security and for Tech News Today. We thank ProXPN for their support of our show, Tech News Today. Joining us now to discuss around the table some of the tech stories of the day, Aaron Newcomb, oft-times host of Floss Weekly and all about Android, and right here on Tech News Today. How's it going, Android? Aaron. I started to call you Android and then bailed and called you Android.
You can call me Android. That's fine. It's kind of a compliment. No, it's great.
Andy Newcomb.
That's right. That's right.
How is it going,
It's my middle name.
Yes. Good to have you,
it's going
man.
good. Thanks for having me. It's great.
Samsung, let's start with Samsung. They just announced 3 new products at IFA in Berlin. They had another one of their Samsung Unpacked announcements. It was a little weird announcement. J.K. Shin came out, he's the head of Samsung, and announced the 3 new products right off the bat. We was like, boom, boom, boom. We thought we were going to be out of there quick. But then all of the division vice presidents came out and had a longer look at it. Wasn't quite the Broadway announcement of earlier this year. We got to look at the Note 3, as we mentioned. That is a new iteration on the Galaxy Note. It's a 5.7-inch full HD 168-gram phone. We got the Galaxy 10.1. It's a little thinner, 7.9 millimeters, 535 grams for the Wi-Fi edition of there, with a nicer screen, 2560 by 1600. That's the same as the Nexus 10 if you're comparing. And the Galaxy Gear, the watch, finally came. It's got a camera in the wristband, 1.63-inch Super AMOLED screen, 800 megahertz single core, gyroscope, accelerometer, voice control, comes in 6 colors, and can even do voice command for things like calls and text. It's going to be $299, and it's only going to work with other Android 4.3 Samsung devices. So to begin with, that's just the Note 3 and the Note 10.1, which we found out today, and any Galaxy S4s that have been upgraded to 4.3. They do say that eventually it'll be compatible with the older Notes as well. But you're definitely going to be locked into the Samsung universe if you want this thing. Aaron, we talked a lot about it. You were on the live coverage with us. Sum up again your feelings about this watch, because you are actually a watch wearer.
Yeah, actually, I am a watch. A lot of people don't wear watches anymore, but I do wear a watch. But it's not something I'm really going to buy. I'm actually more interested in seeing what Google's going to do or another company's going to do with something that's a little bit more ubiquitous and plays with other phones than just the Galaxy line. I mean, Samsung is doing pretty good. I think at first we were a little worried that it was only going to work with the Note, but they said it would work with the Note and the Galaxy line, and there'll be software upgrades to support it coming out. So that's good. But, you know, I still would like to be able to use it with an HTC device, with a Motorola device, with an LG device. I mean, something that comes out hopefully from Google will be able to support any phone running on, as long as it runs on the Android platform. And I think that's what I'm really looking for. Then I might be able to justify plunking down $300 for something like this.
I think the limited compatibility is actually really smart, because if Samsung is introducing this product and it might have some bugs and things, the way the Samsung can control that experience is that only a few products have to interact with it. So if the Galaxy series or the new Note, if these devices can interact with it and they interact well, it might cause a lot of goodwill for this product in the long run. It definitely looks like a revision 1 product with those 4 screws on there. A lot prettier than the leaks we saw, I thought. But I think the rumored price is $300. Is that official? Or is that...
well, that's what The Verge is saying, $299. So they're saying they got that from Samsung. It was never mentioned in the actual announcement.
That's only about $50 more than a Pebble Watch. And there's a lot more functionality in there. So I think if you're in the Samsung world, it's not a bad idea. I just think that the next revision will probably be more open once they can figure out a lot of bugs.
Well, and it also, it is the price of an expensive watch. And somebody brought that up in the chat room during the announcement. A lot of watches that do less are more expensive out there. So if you are the kind of person who wants a status symbol watch or a really functional watch, this may be the right thing for you, especially if you're a Note fan. I do get the sense that Samsung is targeting this as an accessory to its Note fans rather than trying to make it widespread.
Yeah,
it seems like...
Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, I'll go. So the other thing I was interested in is it really seems, they said they have a lot of apps to run on the phone right now, but it doesn't seem like, I don't know how open that program is. They really didn't talk about it. So could I pick one of these up and write my own app and do something really crazy with it? And they didn't really elaborate on that too much. They were more about, here's the interlinkage between the phone and the watch. I do like, to Ayaz's point, I like the fact that when you pull out your Note, it automatically pulls it. It knows that you're connected, and it automatically pulls up the screen. So if you're reading your email or an SMS on your watch, it'll automatically pull that up, like intuitively. Oh, you must want more information about whatever you're doing, so I'll bring that application up on your phone as well. So there's some things like that, and I think that the argument that this is a good thing, I think it will help in that Samsung has the opportunity to make some special things happen if you're in the Samsung universe. So if you keep in that universe, whereas if you do make a more general device, then you might have to dumb it down a little bit to play with everybody.
I can't help but, I'm excited about the whole smartwatch thing because I just sort of want them all to come to market, and then we can actually compare them. But I can't help but look at all of these Galaxy Gears, and there are lots of photos of several of them up someone's arm, and the embargo obviously lifted on the Galaxy Gear reviews during the announcement because all of the review sites now have their reviews published. And I mean, that thing would look so ridiculous on me. I mean, every wrist I've seen it on is clearly a man's hand, and they're not that slim. Even though I think they're really cool looking, I just don't think this is something that a lot of people are going to decide to wear every day. For some people, the aesthetic is going to work out nicely. And I think there are some, at least on The Verge, there are some nice comparisons where the gear is right next to the Pebble, so you can see how it differentiates and the thickness and the band differences. But really, I mean, again, we're still at the point where we're comparing everything to the Pebble, and the Pebble is far from a perfect smartwatch. So I'm excited to see what else is coming out. I mean, is Apple going to show us something next week? Is it going to make the Galaxy Gear look really bulky, or is it going to make the Galaxy Gear look like a great device? I'm not really sure. But yeah, I don't think I could wear that thing.
Yeah, I thought the placement of the camera was really interesting too. It kind of looks like a wart on your wrist to me. Like I don't know if anybody else thought that, but I just thought it was really weird how you have to hold the watch a certain angle and it shoots from the front.
Wonder Woman style, yeah.
It's all and it really does look like that. I mean, it's really odd to see the camera where it is. I was really hoping that the camera would be on the front or on the face of it, so that you could do like Google Hangout right on the phone. That would be really cool.
That would be pretty good.
But I guess we have to wait for that.
So that's Samsung's big announcement. All right, we got some other news to talk about today, though. Sarah, Topsy, making it easy to find my most embarrassing tweets.
Yeah, or mine anyway. I could barely really keep up with all the other news this morning because I was so busy searching Topsy for old tweets. Topsy has, at least for a month, been able to... It's building a database of tweets that went back to as early as 2010. For those of us who have been on Twitter since then, that's potentially a lot of tweets. In fact, Topsy says their overall index is about 540 billion tweets. Of course, the first tweet was sent by co-founder Jack Dorsey back in 2006. Now, Topsy has expanded its database yet again to allow you to search. It's not really its database. It's a way to search Twitter's database back to the beginning of time, or the beginning of the first point that you became on Twitter, or anybody else that you want to search got onto Twitter. Jamie DeGur, who's the Topsy's Senior Vice President of Product and Marketing, says, with more than 450 million tweets being sent every day, indexing Twitter all the way back to 2006 is a huge undertaking. And Topsy now houses more items in our indices than Microsoft Bing. That's pretty impressive. All right, so I went back and figured, okay, I remember what my first tweet was that I ever sent. It's just sort of ingrained in my memory. So I did some searching and I tried to figure out, okay, well, how far back does it go? And indeed, if I search for myself and I go back to the oldest tweet ever sent, there's definitely some embarrassing stuff. I was a terrible tweeter back in the early days. In fact, when I first got on Twitter, I wasn't even living in the US. So I don't know. It's just like weird stuff about Argentina. One of my embarrassing past tweets was about leaving spaghetti on the counter. I just felt like the world needed to know about that. Jason, I put the link in our show notes if you would like to actually click the particular link. And what's nice about Topsy is, Twitter will allow you to download an archive of your tweets. That's something that they rolled out a few months ago. But that, it's like an XML file, and it's not actually the permalink to that original tweet itself. Topsy will link you back to the original permalink. I actually also found my first trip to the old Twit cottage. That was back in 2007. And I tweeted about it, and I'm actually kind of glad. That was sort of a fun thing to uncover because I wouldn't have remembered that. But you don't have to search yourself. You can search anybody else. But has anyone else played around with this? With Topsy search and Aaron? I mean, how long before Twitter just says, all right, Topsy, we're buying you?
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. I mean, this looks like it would be an incredible tool for researchers or anyone studying like politics, to find out trends and behaviors and all this stuff. Does anybody know how they're getting away with this? I mean, did they start when Twitter started and they just started capturing the fire hose at that point? I mean, how did they get all this information? I'm kind of looking for that in some of the articles we have on this, and it doesn't say how they have access to all this information. But what an incredible tool for people that are looking to research, like I say, buying patterns, human behavior. How do people respond to disasters? Like, what if you were a charity, the Red Cross, for example, and you want to say, look, how can we better utilize this to get more donations when a disaster happens or something like that? I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Well,
the interface is a little confusing for me. I'm trying to do the specific range, and you can only do it with the calendar. You can't go in and edit manually, which makes it hard to go way back. It's kind of annoying, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah,
you just got to click forever.
Gotta do some clicks. I was actually having a problem with the date range earlier. For whatever reason, it's probably, it's getting hit with a lot of people searching for stuff. I think, Topsy has access to a certain part of the API that other third-party services could also have access to. They've obviously made it a bit of a mission to do what Twitter has never offered, and that's give us some advanced search tools back to the beginning of when Twitter existed. It just highlights how annoying it is that Twitter doesn't do this themselves. Twitter's a huge company. It's bigger than Topsy by a wide margin, has a lot of money. So they've got the functionality for this. And yes, I understand that they have given us some Twitter archive download tools, but this just makes a lot more sense. I'd like to have search capabilities that will just send me back to the original Twitter page that then I can copy the URL and paste it somewhere, or whatever I want to do. I don't know why Twitter continues to drag its feet on this.
I think you were talking about it earlier. There's a good chance Twitter might just buy Topsy because they've already done the work. They already have a search tool. They have all this stuff, and they keep it out of the hands of other companies. So I figure that's probably why Twitter's dragging its feet. They're just like, okay, let's collect the money, and we'll go buy Topsy in like 5 minutes. That's going to work because that's what they do. They seem to buy and then destroy.
Well, they bought, was it Sumize? Was that the one that was the big Twitter search for a long time?
Yes. Yep.
And
Twitter bought Sumize a couple years ago.
So I would imagine they're doing this. And you remember Twitter made that archive available to people. I wonder if that is somehow able to give Topsy something to take advantage of. By the way, 6 years ago, I was posting most of my things from Pounce, and they were the
Pounce.
Oh boy. I mean, I talked a lot about what I was eating. I mean, I was really a Twitter cliche. But I didn't know any better. I thought that's what you did back in the old days, 5-6 years ago. Jeez.
Well, we heard about some of the big Sony announcements from IFA in the news fuse, but we also have Eurogamer reporting Sony working on an Oculus Rift-like device for the Sony PS4.
Yeah, so it would be a VR headset similar to the Rift that basically sit on your face. It's this screen, I guess. And now Sony apparently has internally tested the device with the racing game Evolution Studios Drive Club, and players are able to look around the cockpit by wearing this device. Now, Evolution has worked on 3D games since 2008, so they're like an instant fit with this. Eurogamer says that Sony's VR headset was going to appear at Gamescom last week, but it was pulled and is expected to make its debut next year. Now, according to Eurogamer, Oculus, the makers of the Oculus Rift headset, has attracted a bunch of companies that are looking to purchase Oculus, the company. Oculus's founder, Palmer Luckey, told Eurogamer, as far as getting acquired, that's not on the table. Now, Aaron, displays on your face with the next generation consoles, would this give Sony's PS4 an edge over the other devices?
Well, it's got to have something, right? I mean, it's a very competitive market, and people are really polarized. So if you're an Xbox enthusiast, you really need something to switch. I think people did switch to the Xbox when Kinect came out, for example, because that was so unique and so cool, and it, enabled a new experience, right? This enables a new experience. So if Sony can make this work and connect it to the PS4 and make it so it doesn't look quite as clunky as the Oculus Rift, and who knows what it's actually going to look like? I mean, they've got there's some screenshots and things floating around on the internet, but I mean, who knows what it's really going to look like? But if they can make it look halfway decent, keep the price down, and give people a different experience, I think people will actually absolutely go for it.
Sony's got the momentum right now. Veronica Belmont was hosting a panel at DragonCon on the console wars, and the mood in that room was definitely in favor of the Sony PS4. But Microsoft has a lot of ways to get people back, and one of those is the built-in Kinect and that motion control, if they can make some more compelling uses for it. So something like this, I think, is essential for Sony to say, hey, PS4 isn't just a great basic game machine that is, on the cutting edge in a new console. It's also ahead of the game, and it can do, and because everybody talks about the Oculus Rift in these angelic tones, if it's a big if, Sony could come out with something that is as good and gets people to rave in that way, it would be a huge advantage for them, I think.
We've seen some weird looking peripherals for consoles. We've seen the Wii U tablet, and that only works with the Wii, so that's kind of had a huge backlash because people are like, why am I buying this tablet? Apart from the whole problems with its whole marketing thing, I'm just kind of curious if that kind of lock-in device, if it's only going to work with the Sony PS4, is that going to be enough, or does Sony have enough media things going for it? So, like, oh, you can watch Netflix on it, you can do lots of other things. I just don't know if that's enough of a hook to give it an advantage, because why would you want to now wear something on your face if you didn't like 3D glasses or you didn't like the Virtual Boy, the Nintendo old school style.
But you don't think people like the Oculus Rift?
I think they do. I think that's a niche product. It's Sony we're talking about, though. They're trying to do this for the masses, right?
Yeah, I think the Oculus Rift has been embraced by a small number of people. I wouldn't call it like this is just the future of gaming and we're all going to embrace it. So I think you make a good point, Ayaz. This is Sony's version of it, but Sony wants to be as mainstream as possible. I mean, they want to churn out products that don't seem too niche, that don't seem too hardcore. I don't know if I'm ready for that. So I don't know.
What if you could use it? What if you could use it with the PS4 and Sony smartphones? What if it could stream from your smartphone to enable a new way to do gaming on your phone?
I think it would be smarter for Sony to do it it works best with an Xperia phone, but it works from any Android phone because Microsoft has this glass, right? The glass system to work with your Windows phone, but the Windows phone users are a smaller amount right now. That doesn't mean much to somebody who's really tied to Android right now.
Yeah, I would love that. I don't know if Sony's up for it. I don't know.
Yeah.
In the past, they haven't been quite as open as some of the other manufacturers in terms of opening up for developers and developing APIs. I know they do it sometimes. Don't get mad at me, but they haven't been the poster child. So I'd love for that to happen. I'm not sure if that's the direction they're going to go, but I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Maybe it's just maybe it's just strapping an Xperia Z to your lenses or something. It is an Android phone, or it's an app that runs. You just have to have it to this nice little ski goggle attachment.
They like that. They like having you strap things to other things. That's a good point. The QX100 that we talked about in the news fuse today, which, by the way, Android and iOS compatible. So there's an example of Sony trying to get over their history.
The new Sony.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Let's talk a little more about Android, actually. We mentioned yesterday Google has changed the name or officially made the name of Android 4.4 KitKat in partnership with Nestle. A lot of stories today explaining what's going on, digging into this. Apparently, it started in November 2012. The director of Android Global Marketing, John Lagerling, cold called Nestle. Within an hour, Nestle says we wanted to do this. Within 24 hours, they had a principal agreement. They finalized all the details at Mobile World Congress in February and then kept the secret. No money being changed hands. They made 50 million bars in the shape of an Android in 19 countries. I'm sorry, they made 50 million bars in the shape of an Android and kept that secret from the Nestle employees. They kept the name. They kept using the name Key Lime Pie internally at Google so that the employees didn't know. And now they're going to start selling bars in 19 countries with Android on the cover. So Russia and all across Europe, all over the place. All kinds of places in Asia. And if you get one of those bars, it's like a Willy Wonka thing. You have a chance to win a Nexus 7 tablet or a Google Play gift card. Hershey licenses the name KitKat and manufactures the candy bars in the United States, but the Kit Kats in the United States still got the Android thing, even though the deal is with Nestle, so somehow they worked that out. Apparently, this all stems from the fact that Android engineering head Hiroshi Lockheimer's favorite candy bar is the Kit Kat, and there's all kinds of stories in Nilay Patel's article today about what that has meant and how people have decorated his cube in Kit Kats. The other interesting thing, in a video showing them unveiling the Kit Kat statue at Google, because they do a statue for every version of Android, we see somebody with what looks like a 5-inch Nexus 7. So either a new phone or a phablet or something like that. That's probably the biggest news out of this whole thing. Aaron, what do you make of the Kit Kat stuff? Is this fun or just stupid? Or
I'm way more interested in the phone, actually.
Yeah.
So, I think it's stupid. I kind of wish they didn't do it. It just feels like selling out a little bit. Hey, let's take advantage of our popularity by co-marketing and co-branding stuff, and maybe they'll give us some money to call it. I mean, what's going to be the next?
It's working already.
I mean, what's going to be when we get to R? Is it going to be Reese's? I mean, I love Reese's peanut butter cups, but I mean, is that the direction we're going? It just doesn't feel good.
Android Reese's.
Yeah, it didn't really make me feel any better yesterday when people started saying, "Well, wait, hold on. Both companies say that no money changed hands." I mean, that was sort of my initial reaction of like, "Ugh, this is just like product placement, gross." But, and certainly Google would not be the first company to embrace that. But even so, it just seems like if it's really Hiroshi Lockheimer's favorite candy bar, and now we're all making, Kit Kat jokes for another 6 months because of it.
Yeah.
it seems a little cheap to me.
I don't know if it's cheap. I think KitKats are a really great brand. No, it definitely
are not paid for by Nestle.
No, it's just an oddball thing to see.
It
But I
really
think
is.
I'm kind of curious about if this will make Android more consumer friendly, because you're seeing this little green guy on candy bars and like, well, what's that? What's going on there? Is that actually going to help brand awareness for Android? Because Google does have an image problem when it comes to Android. Everyone thinks Samsung, and they think that's Android really, because that's the top manufacturer of phones. Google kind of has to go out there and go, by the way, yeah, it's Android. We make Android. And if it's on candy bars, it might give them more of a publicity that they don't get, because they're the underlying infrastructure for everything, not necessarily upfront with the Nexus.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering all day yesterday is like, who's winning more here? Like, it felt like KitKat really kind of won in the sense because everybody was talking about KitKats and, oh, KitKats are delicious and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, you might be right. Having that little Android guy on all of these wrappers that are being distributed throughout the world, I suppose raises awareness, but it still feels a little dirty, right? It still feels like you've just sold out, even though you have no money officially changed hands. You're selling out versions of Android, and that as a concept is weird. And just feels
especially
wrong.
Especially when it's supposed to be developer friendly.
Yeah.
Built on open source. I know it's not all open source, but it's built on open source. And I don't know. It doesn't set right with me for some reason. I think if you were really gonna, and plus if you were really gonna want brand awareness for this thing, you would find some sort of Nexus candy bar. You wouldn't find Android, because Android's a consortium, right? Samsung runs Android. All these phones run Android, but what you really need is if you're going to build brand awareness, you want to do it around a Google brand, which is Nexus.
So you want the Nexus
I have the solution right now to part of this problem. I would like to call upon Nestle in an open request made right now, right here on the internet. Open source your formula for KitKat.
There'll be
Here.
a forked version of KitKat, though.
What, you mean you're going to eat it with a fork?
No, there'll be one with a honeycomb inside.
Oh.
Wait, no.
The forked versions of KitKat. Actually, there's so many versions. KitKat is the most forked candy bar in the world. There's like potato.
Yeah.
Eileen was looking at these galleries online. There's green tea matcha and potato KitKats and sweet potato KitKats.
Gotta stop this fragmentation of KitKats.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, they're built for fragmentation.
Stop this delicious fragmentation, seriously.
Beating this to the ground.
Well, you know who's going to stop making phones is Panasonic, actually, Sarah.
Enough of the KitKats. Let's talk about Panasonic pulling out of the smartphone market, at least in Japan. They said they will move into an outsourced production model. They'll still offer the brand to other manufacturers, some emerging markets like India. But company president Kazuhiro Tsuga says that he was ready to close down any division, has said this in the past, that misses a 5% operating margin goal within 3 years. Now, if you look at Panasonic's mobile arm, it is forecast to lose more than 1.1 billion yen, which is about 11 million US dollars for the incoming fiscal year. Losses were 8.1 billion yen or 81 million the year before. So sure, the loss is closing, but he's sort of like, hey, I said if there's a loss, we're not going to keep putting money and resources into something that just isn't working. What's interesting is that when I think of Panasonic, I think of TVs and a fair amount of laptops. Panasonic was the #2 phone maker in Japan once upon a time, had 19% of the market in 2001. Last year, it was more like 7% of the Japanese market. As a comparison, iPhone hovers around 24%. And Japan's biggest carrier, NTT Docomo, said that it would be promoting only a Sony Xperia A and a Samsung Galaxy S4 during its top 2 summer advertising. So basically, Panasonic says, not only are we having financial losses, but we're kind of getting shut out of the promotional market. Aaron, do you think that this is a good move? Just, cut your losses before you see too many of them? Or should it have been sooner? Should more companies adopt the Panasonic model?
Well, I think it's a good move on their part. I mean, if you're not making money, how long do you go losing money when you're looking out your window and you're seeing Samsung and Apple and Google and with Motorola combined, putting all these phones out in the marketplace, and you're not getting carrier adoption. I mean, I think that's the big thing. I talked earlier about how Samsung has all the pieces to put together a smartwatch or whatever we're calling it these days quickly, and they can react to market demand very quickly. But the other thing that they have but it sounds like Panasonic doesn't, except in Japan, is carrier adoption. So if you don't get U.S. carriers and you don't get European carriers to carry your products, you're really fighting an uphill battle. And at some point, you just have to say, look, it's not working, guys. We got lots of other things to go concentrate on. This was a failed experiment.
Yeah, if Panasonic didn't have other businesses to be in, we'd be calling them the BlackBerry of Japan right now. You know, they would be in dire straits. But this is the beauty of being diversified and having lots of different market lines, is that you can afford to say, hey, if one of them misses a 5% operating margin, we're just going to get out of that business. I think it is smart. I agree with you, Aaron.
I'm kind of sad about this. I mean, I remember I'm thinking like as an 80s kid, Sony and Panasonic were like the two major brands of everything. And now it's like we're talking about Sony struggling with VR helmets or smartwatches or weird little camera lenses. And then Panasonic's like, they try to get into smartphones. They can't do that. We know the televisions are kind of the margins on televisions are really decreasing at this point. That's why we keep seeing these revamped 3D TVs, 4K TVs, 8K TVs, because they desperately want you to buy stuff. So Panasonic leaving this market, I mean, probably best for long term. But after a while, you can't start thinking of Panasonic anymore as like a premier electronics manufacturer if they stop making certain electronics.
All right, let's finish up talking about another company getting into the paying for the video to be made for them. This time it's Vimeo.
Vimeo is trying to pump up its Vimeo On Demand system. Now, this company is going to offer filmmakers at the Toronto International Film Festival a $10,000 advance if they agree to distribute their videos through Vimeo On Demand. That's Vimeo's paid streaming service. Now, Vimeo CEO Kerry Trainor said this is a test. He said that $10,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money. You can't shoot a movie on that, or a lot of movies that way. But the cash could be useful to those filmmakers for extra production. You know, these films are already shot and are at the festival. The filmmakers who use Vimeo On Demand get 90% of sales, and this $10,000 advance gives Vimeo a 30-day digital exclusive. Now, if the film makes that $10,000 quicker than 30 days, that exclusive would be over quicker. Aaron, what do you think of this strategy? Do you think Vimeo is going to become like a destination for these indie films?
I can see it happening, actually. I really like Vimeo. I've been a Vimeo user for a long time. Back when I was doing my own podcast about open source, my own video podcast, that's how I uploaded. I uploaded everything to Vimeo first, and then it went other places second, because at the time they had higher quality than YouTube. It was easier to get high quality content on Vimeo. It looked really good. And to be honest, they're fighting for eyeballs, right? They've got to compete with not only YouTube, but also Netflix, Redbox has a streaming service. All these streaming services are coming out, Hulu. And so I think that at this point, they're like, hey, look, guys, we got to up our game a little bit if we want to keep the eyeballs on Vimeo. And so, I really like Vimeo. I hope that they do well with this. If I had more time on my hands, I'd try to put something together for $10,000.
I like the Vimeo interface too. And in fact, recently, I would say over the last couple of months, there have been a couple of short films that for whatever reason I heard about and I looked up online, and they were exclusive if you wanted to watch them in their entirety on Vimeo. There was one movie about sissy bounce in New Orleans. It was great. You should look it up. But I think the experience is awesome. Vimeo has always been sort of equated with really creative. There's a lot of like commercial artists tend to put up stuff on Vimeo and use it as a portfolio for them. So I think if 90% of sales sounds really good, it's probably more of just getting the word out rather than having to convince anybody that Vimeo is a good place for high quality movies. Because I feel like people who make high quality movies already know that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sarah. I think what's going on here is Vimeo trying to maybe get that word out to people who aren't super into the scene and pull in a few more eyeballs and just continue the quality. And there's something to be said for like, hey, we don't need to make a big splash. We just want to maintain that quality and encourage those filmmakers. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, in my early days of podcasting, it was similar to Aaron. I used Vimeo a lot because their tools were really this much better. Their video player was better than YouTube. YouTube really dragged its feet on HD when it came to that implementation. All kinds of things that YouTube eventually caught up with, by the way. But Vimeo, if they want to become a destination, they're competing against lots of different companies right now. If they're funding movies, now you're talking about maybe even competing with something like Netflix. So to have this kind of these kinds of films to come over, a $10,000 advance might be enough to get who knows, if maybe the next major filmmakers on board early on. So Vimeo could become a really great destination, especially with their video player. I still think their video player is like heads and shoulders above a lot of other video players. So when it comes to that, if you're going to watch this quality movie, you have to have a good video player, and I think Vimeo is really good at that.
Yeah, doesn't it make sense, guys, if you think about if Netflix wanted to get into the user-contributed arena, right, to compete more with YouTube. Wouldn't it make sense for them to purchase something like Vimeo? I mean, it seems like they have a lot of synergies right now. It's like, you know, Netflix kind of dominates this the subscription model delivered to your living room, but they can't really compete with you know, Gangnam Style and things that people just upload that turn into hits and maybe a revenue stream for advertising and things like that. I mean, it seems like it would be a really good partnership if these two got together.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Reed Hastings and everything they've said indicate that they're not interested in that space, that they want to remain kind of hyper-focused on what they are doing. But you make a great case, Aaron. I mean, if they ever did want to even get a little bit into that space, Vimeo just, it seems right, doesn't it? It fits their ethos. It just seems like it would marry up really well.
I wonder if Vimeo would fit better with Hulu, actually, because that's the kind of content you're used to, kind of free streaming. You pay for extra stuff. That might be a better synergy. But Netflix sounds good, too. It just seems like one of those two companies should snap up a partnership with Vimeo.
Maybe Vimeo doesn't want to be bought. Maybe they're just like, leave us alone. We want to be Vimeo. Who knows? All right, let's move on to the randomizer. With all the Samsung Unpacked coverage and all of that stuff going on today, we didn't do a straw poll. I just picked a randomizer for efficiency's sake, but that didn't stop the chat room, who actually created their own straw poll. Should people make straw polls for the sake of making a straw poll without real meaning? 43%, no, too personal of a question. Not even going to answer that. Let's talk about Google applying their big data engines to their own food program. It's famous how Google feeds snacks to their employees. And apparently the HR department, which is called People Ops, collated data on key details such as how close employees sat to the candy. And eventually the M&Ms were moved into opaque containers while dried fruit and nuts were stored in clear glass. This had the desired effect on office staff in New York. 2,000 employees ate 3.1 million fewer calories in M&Ms over the course of 7 weeks.
That's fascinating. I think the bigger thing to take away from this is that we now know what the letter M will be in 2 versions of Android. If M&Ms are this popular on the Google campus, we know what's next. We know it's coming.
Totally tipped their hand.
Yes.
Yeah. And M&M Mars, they're coming for you. Be ready for that call.
I hope it's Mounds instead. Just throw a curve.
I think
Android Joy.
It was M&Ms internally, but nobody likes M&Ms, so we're going to go with Mounds.
Oh, what did they do that?
Why don't they just charge for the M&Ms? People will eat fewer of them.
That's not very
Yeah, but nobody wants to. Then they wouldn't eat any of them.
Morale high.
That's not very Google, is it, though? That would be
Not very
being
googly.
evil, definitely.
Nope.
Why doesn't Twit just supply us with more M&Ms? Isn't there a lesson here or something?
Green M&M jokes, make them on your own. Let's see what's on the calendar.
All right, tomorrow Samsung will take the stage again to talk about the rest of its new products. It's probably going to be heavily TV focused. I, for one, am excited. I'd like to get a new television myself, even though I just got one. And also, Apple has scheduled a media event for September 11th in China, sort of to coincide with what's happening next week.
Yeah, I think with the time difference, it probably ends up being about the same time, maybe not exactly the same time, but around the same time as our September 10th announcement.
I mean, it's probably more of like maybe not just a simulcast, but I don't know, more regional version of what's going on, maybe focused on products that are perhaps geared more to the Chinese market. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's a tip off that we're going to see those feature phone versions of the iPhone, those less expensive versions of the iPhone. Dare I say cheaper iPhones, because those are targeted directly at the Chinese market for sure. Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
Oh my gosh, it's a message from Dan. He says, hey, TNT crew, first, great show and coverage is normal, but I have a theory on why Microsoft and Nokia, why that deal happened. Microsoft wanted to get into the enterprise device market. Yeah, they could have bought BlackBerry, but BlackBerry now has a bad brand in enterprise. With the Nokia handsets going to become under the Microsoft brand, Microsoft could build in some crazy Windows Server integration, making device management for enterprises seamless without the need of a BES server. The move could also help bolster some adoption of Windows 8 if they could market the enterprise ecosystem as a whole. Just my thoughts. What do you guys think about this?
I'm wondering if I'm missing something here, but couldn't Microsoft do all of those things anyway? since they administer Windows Phone? And don't they? I think they have a big enterprise plan for managing phones if you get Windows Phone in the enterprise. I'm not sure what I'm missing as far as what Nokia brings to the table, other than I guess the package can now include like buy the phones from us, which maybe that's a big enough deal to sway some companies. I don't know. Aaron, do you see anything in here that I'm missing?
No, I think I'm missing it too. I mean, I was just thinking about this. I mean, maybe it's because I work in Silicon Valley, but I mean, most of the companies, even before I moved out to California, were already starting down the BYOD path. So I don't really think there's a play there in terms of enterprise devices.
Yeah,
it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thank you, Aaron Newcomb, doing the hat trick today of Floss Weekly, Tech News Today, and our special Samsung Unpacked coverage. Really appreciate that, man. Let folks know what you're up to, where they can find you online.
Yeah, so definitely follow me on Google+. I'd love to get my follower count up a little bit. I'm already hovering right around 5,000, so I'd like to get that up a little bit. So add me to your circles on Google+. I promise you won't regret it. And if you're a Facebook user or a Twitter follower, you can follow me on those services too. Everything gets reposted, so if you're more comfortable with those, just because it's not my personal preference doesn't mean it's not yours. Feel free to follow me there. Also, take a look around the Twit network. You'll find me on, as Tom mentioned at the top of the show, occasional co-host on a lot of other shows. This Week in Google, all about Android. I love hanging out with Jason. Sometimes on the Tuesday evening, Monday evening slot, I should say. And so yeah, check me out there as well.
And I follow Aaron Newcomb on Google+, and I can say I've never once regretted it.
I'll back you up on that, Tom.
Don't forget our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com, to let us know what stories you'd like to see us cover. You can not only submit them, but vote on the stories as well. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT, email us TNT@twit.tv, and give us a call, leave us a voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. We'll be back tomorrow with CNET's Tim Stevens. See you then.